Could the Serbian government be about to fall? Since November 2024, large-scale student protests have seen tens of thousands take to the streets to demand political change. Sparked by a tragic incident in the country's second city, the demonstrations have already led to several high-profile resignations, including the Prime Minister. Now, many are asking whether they could even force the country's long-standing president from power. So, what exactly lies behind the protests, and could they really force a change of government? Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict, security, and statehood. Governments, even the most unpopular and authoritarian ones, often seem untouchable. Insulated by entrenched political structures, security forces and media control, they can usually quell opposition to their rule. However, history has also shown that widespread public pressure can bring even the strongest and most resilient regimes to their knees and force a seemingly entrenched leader from power. One of the most significant current examples of widespread popular protest is occurring in Serbia. Over many months, students have been at the forefront of large-scale demonstrations. However, as the protests spread across the country and attract more sections of society, the pressure on the government is growing. The Republic of Serbia lies in southeastern Europe. Landlocked, it's situated at the crossroads of Central Europe and the Balkans. Hungary borders it to the north, Romania and Bulgaria to the east, North Macedonia to the south, and Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro to the west. It also has a boundary with Kosovo, which broke away in 2008 and whose independence, while recognised by around half the UN, is still unrecognised by Serbia. The country's population is around 6.6 million. Belgrade, the capital, is one of the oldest cities in Europe and serves as the country's political, economic and cultural hub. The country's second city, Novi Sad, lies to its north. Serbia has a long and rich history. Having been a kingdom in medieval times, it was conquered by the Ottoman Empire in the 15th and 16th centuries. However, after a series of uprisings, Serbia gradually regained autonomy during the 19th century, eventually regaining full independence in 1878. This lasted until the end of the First World War, when Serbia was central to the creation of the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, later renamed Yugoslavia. Following the Second World War, Serbia became one of the republics within the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia under the leadership of Josip Broz Tito. However, Tito's death in May 1980 saw the federation steadily fracture. As economic difficulties grew, nationalism intensified across the country's 6 republics, as well as Kosovo, a majority Albanian province of Serbia. It was against this backdrop that Slobodan Milošević, the head of the Serbian Communist Party, rose to prominence. Framing himself as a champion of Serbian nationalism, he launched a series of mass protests known as the anti-bureaucratic revolution that saw him become Serbia's president in 1989. However, while he managed to strengthen his grip on power, his actions further deepened ethnic divisions, destabilising the federation and accelerating its eventual collapse. This all came to a head in 1991 when Slovenia and Croatia declared independence. Marking the start of the Yugoslav wars, the fighting would later spread to Bosnia and then Kosovo. Blamed for inciting and prolonging the wars, the international community imposed sanctions on Serbia. But as the economy collapsed and dissent grew, Milosevic steadily strengthened his grip on the country. However, by the turn of the millennium, opposition was growing, especially after fighting in Kosovo led to NATO's bombing of Serbia in 1999. This would all come to a head the following year. After Milosevic refused to acknowledge defeat in a presidential election, mass protests erupted that saw hundreds of thousands take to the streets. On the 5th of October 2000, Milosevic was finally forced from power and arrested before later being extradited to The Hague to stand trial for war crimes. In 2006, he died before a verdict could be delivered. In the years following Milosevic's downfall, Serbia struggled to find political stability. Although the country moved towards democracy, political infighting and economic challenges hampered progress. The low point came in 2003 when the country's reformist pro-European Prime Minister Zoran Đinđić was assassinated by elements of the security forces working in conjunction with organised crime. Although the push towards European integration continued under the Democratic Party in the following years, nationalist parties such as the Serbian Radical Party continued to enjoy considerable popular support. But as the decade ended, Serbian politics experienced a significant shift. By now, people had become increasingly disillusioned with the Democratic Party. While it promoted reform and European integration, it delivered few tangible results. Meanwhile, although nationalist sentiment grew after Kosovo declared independence in February 2008, many were growing tired of the radicals' extremism. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please give it a like and perhaps subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. All this would pave the way for the emergence of a new political leader, Aleksandar Vučić. Despite serving as Milosevic's Minister for Information and building a reputation as a staunch nationalist, he now rebranded himself as a pro-European reformer. In early 2008, he broke away from the Radical Party and co-founded the Serbian Progressive Party. From there, his political career went from strength to strength. After serving as Deputy Prime Minister in a coalition government from 2012 to 2014, the Progressive won an overwhelming victory in the 2014 general election, and Vucic became Prime Minister. This was followed by another significant win in early elections held 2 years later, in 2016. However, the real turning point came in 2017, when Vucic was elected president. Although the Serbian political system is similar to the French model, where the president oversees foreign policy and the prime minister runs day-to-day domestic policy, Vucic now became the undisputed power in the country as the Progressives won further parliamentary elections. Meanwhile, in 2022, he secured a second 5-year presidential term. As a result, over the last decade, Aleksandar Vučić has come to completely dominate the Serbian political scene. While there's little doubt that Serbia has been transformed under Vucic, opinion is divided on whether this has been for the better or worse. Supporters point out that the economy has grown significantly under his administration. At the same time, major infrastructure projects, including roads and railways, have been implemented alongside steps to increase foreign investment. In contrast, opponents insist that Vucic has overseen a steady rolling back of democratic freedoms in the country. They accuse him of suppressing the media and manipulating elections, as well as using state resources and political patronage to bolster his power base and oversee the spread of rampant corruption. In addition, many argue that his quest for foreign investment has caused significant environmental damage to the country, pointing to a major waterfront development in the capital, Belgrade, as well as the impact of proposed lithium mining. Arguing that international partners, including the European Union and the United States, have been complicit in supporting the administration and prioritising stability over democracy, opposition parties have insisted that they can no longer work through normal democratic channels. As a result, this has led to frequent mass protests over the past decade. And it's against this backdrop that the latest protests have emerged. The roots of the current unrest lie in a tragic incident that took place on the 1st of November 2024 when the newly reconstructed canopy at Novi Sad railway station collapsed, killing 15 people. While investigations were quickly launched, many immediately argued that corruption lay behind the tragedy, blaming poor workmanship by the Chinese consortium that had led the project and inadequate safety inspections. But while the incident led to the resignation of the Transport Minister and the arrest of over a dozen officials, many saw it as symbolic of deep-rooted mismanagement at the heart of government. As a result, groups of students began taking to the streets to demand justice, greater transparency, as well as more government spending on infrastructure and education. From there, and despite attempts to suppress the demonstration, the protests quickly spread across the country, attracting other groups such as farmers, academics and lawyers. Then, in January 2025, thousands of students marched the 80 kilometres from Novi Sad to Belgrade, blocking key highways and intersections. Meanwhile, tens of thousands continue to rally in what many now see as the most significant unrest in Serbia since the fall of Milosevic. Needless to say, all this has prompted questions about what this means for the future of the government and President Vucic. Will the protests bring him down? At this stage, it's hard to say. For a start, the students don't seem to be explicitly trying to bring down the government. Indeed, they're avoiding direct engagement with the opposition parties. Instead, they're focused on more profound changes to the Serbian political system. At the same time, the president remains defiant. As he sees it, the protests are not a reflection of popular will. Instead, he argues that they've been stirred up by foreign forces that want to undermine Serbia. Meanwhile, the president's supporters insist that he has long enjoyed much greater national popularity than his critics suggest. Beyond the urban centres of Belgrade and Novi Sad, many ordinary Serbs believe that he's overseen economic growth. More to the point, the lack of a coherent opposition also helps. While many may not like his style, there's a widespread sense that there's no credible alternative. Whatever opposition does exist is weak and fractured and doesn't seem to have a credible policy platform for the country. All this said, the administration is clearly worried about how things are going and senses that it needs to do something. Aside from making concessions to the protesters, this was highlighted when the Serbian Prime Minister Miloš Vučević, a former mayor of Novi Sad, resigned on the 28th of January alongside the city's current mayor. Meanwhile, as evidence suggests that the protests are growing rather than diminishing, past experience in Serbia has shown that popular protests can force leaders from power. This gives the protesters who do explicitly want to overthrow the administration an incentive to continue. In this sense, what seems to be happening now is a battle of wills. How much more traction can the protests gain across society, and how much longer can the momentum last? If the demonstrations continue to grow and spread, the pressure could well become too much. Likewise, if serious violence erupts, especially if provoked by the government, things could also quickly escalate. All this said, Vucic has experienced tackling widespread protests. In this sense, many will feel that his position is secure for the meantime. But as these situations have shown time after time, this sort of pressure is bearable until it isn't. I hope you found that helpful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find interesting. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.